Welcome to the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. I am Joey Calvo. Couple things. One, please continue to help support the victims of the California wildfires. They do still need help. Some do really need to be or really rebuilding their lives and don't have much to work with. So please do what you can in reference to that. The second thing that I'd like to state before we have our wonderful guest who I explained in advance on this. This podcast had a meeting today with the World Broadcast Network TV, which airs their network on Roku, Apple TV, 500 million people. And we have been working on a GoFundMe campaign to be able to do something like this. Now the chance has come. And I really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, is really asking for the support. Because this is where I wanted the podcast to go. I wanted to go on network TV in some way, shape, or form. So that way, guests like Jim could be out to more people than 40 people watching it on YouTube. Okay. I really want to expand this out and really get these guests really recognized. So for as long as we're on this live stream today, that link for the podcast GoFundMe will be there. Okay. Please. I couldn't ask any more or any less of this of anyone. But this is the ultimate goal. This is something that at least one person believed in me that would happen. And here's the opportunity. Yes, there's a cost to it. But I really want to bring this out. I really want to bring like a guest like Jim here out on Roku TV, Apple TV, etc. Please go to the link on the screen and please do what you can. If you can't help financially, share with those that can, because this is the most important part of my life that I really wanted to do. And I thank you in advance for those that do help in any way possible. Tonight we have Jim Marshall. Bear with me 1 minute, Jim, because I have to go to my little cheat sheet here. Okay. He is the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which has greatly aid in the understanding of people, which he created a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics, and published it in a very well-received book called Septemics. So, Jim, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for your patience in reference to the announcement, but welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Joey.
Okay.
Good to be here.
Okay. And so, Jim, how did we get to this phenomena? What got you into? Tell your story is what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, first I wanted to say one sentence, which is pretty much what you said, but in a way that people will understand better. I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena that greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I developed a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics and published it in the book Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena.
Okay.
Now, I'm a polymathic intellectual. And I could tell you all the subjects that I'm interested in, but that's kind of the background music to how I got to this. I went to school for 28 years and was an honor and scholarship student at every level. And I've been meditating for over 40 years.
Okay.
But now I'm going to tell you how I actually got into a career that led me to discover Septemics.
Okay, that's where we want to go.
I have no memory of a time when I was not intensely interested in learning everything taught in every university.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, that's impossible because nobody lives that long.
Right.
But the drive was there. And so I was a very motivated student. I wanted to learn everything.
Yeah.
So the journey to Septemics really begins when I was accepted into engineering school at the age of 16. Now, of course, at the time I thought I would be engineering physical things, such as airfoils or motors or electrons or whatever, as did all the other engineering students. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, it was clear to me that I wanted to engineer the human psyche because it is the area of greatest unknown, of greatest mystery, and more importantly, it is the area in which we as a race are failing miserably. 95% of the problems in industrialized society are because people don't understand people. Don't understand the wife, don't understand the boss, don't understand the next door neighbor, don't understand the son. This goes in all directions. It's a huge problem. And Septemics solves that problem across 35 axes, meaning you have 35 ways to get at it.
Okay.
So to make a long story short, I had this long career as a human development engineer, working one-on-one with hundreds of clients, every description, bringing the person to higher levels of responsibility, realization, personal ethics, success, depending on what the person wanted. All of my clients improved as a result of our interaction, but I started to notice incidentally that I could predict the outcome of the session. I never told that to anyone, but I made notes. And as the decades rolled by, it became obvious to me that the client would be at a specific level on a specific scale that I had previously observed and recorded. And as a result of our interaction, he would go up to the next level on that scale.
Okay.
Now, this happened many thousands of times. And realized the clients had no idea how I was doing what I was doing.
Okay.
All they knew is they came to me with an unwanted condition. They drank too much, or they couldn't get along with their wife, or they couldn't hold a job, whatever it was, and I helped them with it. That's all they knew. So go ahead.
Before you continue on, so you're like a therapist, but in a mathematical way.
Well, I guess you could say that. I never use the word therapist because it suggests there's something wrong with the person.
Right.
And most of my clients were either average or above average people.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So continue on. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off on that.
Okay. So by about 1995, I had simply observed and recorded about 32 scales, all about human phenomena. And around that same time, I was pondering a difficult client. I had this 6-level scale that by then I absolutely knew was correct. And I was trying to resolve her against this scale, and I couldn't do it. Then I realized, it has a 7th level. In other words, I had not previously observed that particular level on that particular scale. And that's for very specific reasons, which if you read the book, you'll find out. Okay. So I suddenly said, there's a 7th level. That's where she is. And as soon as I saw what the level was, I knew where to insert it in the scale. That was not a question. And as soon as I inserted that level into the 6th level scale, making it a 7-level scale, at that moment, it manifested mathematically, meaning it went from being a line, which is what a scale is, to a plane, meaning a whole body of data. So all of these intersecting, interlocking, interacting factors, mathematical factors, jumped out at me that I wasn't looking for. And I said, whoa, I found something here. whatever the hell this is, it has to be natural law because it has mathematics embedded in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, the Fibonacci sequence. So just to sort of tell you a little bit about what I saw, several people have said to me, what book is your book like? And in all candor, I have to say to them, I don't think there's ever been a book like this before. But each one of these scales is presented in what you could call a table or a spreadsheet. And that table is very similar to the periodic table of elements.
Okay.
Which is intensely mathematical. It's completely mathematical.
Mm-hmm.
So each one of these 35 scales is a periodic table for the corresponding subject.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you a grip on what's going on with all of these human phenomena. It's very precise and specific.
Okay.
So the next thought I had was, I wonder how many of these other scales that I have are actually 7-level scales that had not been developed all the way. Because you have to realize I wasn't developing anything.
Right.
I was just helping my clients and making notes.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing what I was looking for, I inspected all of these other scales. And in a short period of time, each of them went to 7 levels. And when it did, it manifested mathematically. So now I had 32 7-level scales about human phenomena that all have mathematics embedded in them.
Okay.
And being a well-read person, I said, this looks like a new subject to me. I've never seen anything like this before.
Mm-hmm.
My next thought was, wait a minute. I could go from helping people by the hundreds, which is what I have been doing as a human development engineer, to helping them by the millions if I put this in a book and get it out so people can have the data.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to have to write a book. The first draft was finished in December of 95, and I immediately sent it out to colleagues of mine, each of whom had graduate degrees in a variety of subjects.
Mm-hmm.
And they all loved it. They had different responses, but distinctly positive responses.
Right.
And that confirmed what I suspected, which is that this is a new subject that people would get. And the reason they get it is it's natural law.
Mm-hmm.
If you can recall the first time you saw the periodic table of elements, just probably age 12, 13, 14, you looked at it.
Around that time, yeah.
It didn't take too much to see that that made sense. You know, at first blush, you look at, hydrogen is 1, helium is 2, lithium is 3, blah, 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 and it goes down horizontally and vertically.
Yeah.
Well, originally, Mendeleev, who invented the periodic table, had 79 elements. Now we have another 50, and we just keep fitting them in because it works as a paradigm. So the whole science community all over Earth uses that table.
Mm-hmm.
So that is basically what we have here, except it's for human phenomena, and there are 35 of those tables.
Okay.
So what I should tell you now, so your clients or your viewers know what I'm talking about, is the names of the 35 scales, because then you know exactly what subject matter is addressed in the book. Takes about a minute. Okay? So the 35 scales, 24 of them I call individual scales, and 11 I call group scales. These are the individual scales.
Okay.
The scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And the group scales are...
All right, before we get to the group scales,
yes.
Explain to me the difference between the scale of identity and the scale of spiritual identity.
Well, the scale of spiritual identity is specific to the way the person thinks of himself as relative to a spiritual being. Okay. The scale of identity is much broader. It's a much broader thing. It's
Okay.
completely different.
Okay.
Okay.
So, because and the reason why I asked that is because I'm 54 years old. I'm been figuring out for years who I really am in reference to as a person. I don't know if that clarifies into those scales that you were talking about in reference to it. I mean, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. Of course, they're having the health issues, but I'm usually a person that's loyal, that's caring, that's supportive. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if that qualifies into that scale of identity.
Actually, all of these scales would be relevant to you.
Okay.
Based on what you just told me. They would make it clear to you with precision who you are.
Okay.
35 axes.
Okay.
So let me tell you the group scales. It's a
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Go ahead to the group scales. I just wanted to, like I said, I just wanted to bring out that individual one because I just wanted to see, get an idea of how it was used by using myself as a scenario.
Yeah, all of the scales are basically used the way you're suggesting.
Okay.
Well, the name doesn't really tell you much, although when you study, you'll see why it has that name.
Okay, go ahead.
These
now
are
into
the group scales.
Mm-hmm.
The scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics.
Okay.
Any one of these scales by itself could dramatically improve the life of the reader. And I'll give you a simple example of how that would work.
Matter of fact, I actually, you mentioned there was a couple of those scales that really questioned me because I'm, like the scale of relationships, the scale of communication, and the scale of sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
There is someone who is a real supporter of me with this podcast. And everything is all right now communication by email. But of course, I want the physical portion too, to it, to where, the person's right in front of me and I can talk everything. Can you, I don't know, based off of that, if you can, decipher, where it's going in reference to, or what other information you may need to decipher something into at least those three scales that you mentioned for a group with relationship, communication, and sexuality. Because okay. I'm really interested in this person. I will say that.
Okay. So my advice to you is, number one, you should get the book.
Okay.
You should study it. Mm-hmm. And after you know the subject, you should find your level on every scale.
Okay.
35. And then you will be a different person because your understanding of yourself will be dramatically improved.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use the information to locate the other person
mm-hmm.
on all the scales.
Okay.
And if you do that, you will understand that person better than the person understands himself.
Okay. All right.
So now let me give you an example to make this real.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. So I mentioned the scale of motivation.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most important things to know about a person is, what is the person's motivation? Why is this person doing this? We go through this all the time, although you may not think of it that way. So a guy comes to a woman and he's talking to her and she's thinking, why is this guy talking to me? Does he want a date? Does he want money? What does he want? You see,
mm-hmm.
That's motivation. That's how the police solve crimes. They look for a motive. So you can take that one scale and you can ask yourself, what's my mother's motivation toward me? What's my brother's motivation toward me? What's my girlfriend's motivation toward me, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
You could use it for everyone you know or have ever known. And every time you get a correct answer, you'll have an insight. You'll say, oh, that's why my mother did that, because she had that motivation. Or,
Right.
oh, now I understand my girlfriend, why we broke up. She had that motivation. I had this other motivation. See? So you always have an insight.
Mm-hmm.
Then you could take it in reverse vector and say, what's my motive toward Fred? What's my motive toward Alice? What's my motive toward Mary?
Right.
And you could use it again that way, another 200, 300, 400 times for every person you know or have ever known. Now, by the time you finish this exercise, you will have had something like, depending on how many people you know, 500 insights. So your mind will be greatly clarified. The whole subject of motivation in your life will be resolved. You will know why you're doing what you're doing and why they're doing what they're doing. And that makes a big difference in understanding somebody.
Okay.
So, but you realize this is one scale. Okay. You do this with all 35 scales.
Okay.
Well, let me give you now a very common scenario where one would use the same scale.
Okay.
Let's say you're dating this woman for 3 years and you're talking about getting married, right? Big step. So wouldn't it be reasonable to ask, why does this woman want to marry me? I mean, isn't that a sensible question?
It is.
And
But I would say, but my kind of thinking in reference to it is, or by then would be, why does she still want to be with me after everything I threw at her, quote unquote?
Okay.
You know, in reference to how the relationship is going.
Same question.
Yeah.
So now you know this person because you've been hanging around with her for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the scale, it's got only 7 levels. So this is not hard to do.
Right.
So you look at it and you think about it. Oh, I see why she wants to marry me. Level 1, she loves me.
Right.
That's the highest motivation of all. Let's
Right.
set the date. But maybe that's not what happens. Maybe what happens is after you go through this exercise, you say, you know, now that I think about this, I can see she wants to marry me because I drive a Lamborghini, I have a 60-foot yacht, I fly my own Learjet, I live in a $15 million condo, and I have $10 million in the bank. See, that's a different motivation. That's level 4 on the scale of motivation, which is money. I'm not saying it's good or it's bad. It's just what it is, right?
Okay. Let me throw this in there. The person wants to marry me because they trust me with their whole heart. So let's mix that into it with the trust. You know, they trust me with what their life is like. And they know that I'm there to be the support of that trust that they've given me.
That sounds like level 1.
That's okay. So it would be a level 1. Okay.
So let me continue this.
Yeah, please.
So now you've determined that the person wants to marry you because you have money.
Okay.
Now, what you do with that is up to you.
Right.
Now, you might say, okay, this is not the first time somebody wanted to marry me because I'm rich. But this woman is pretty, she's smart, she's funny, she's congenial. We have a lot of fun together, so I'm going to marry her anyway. And you might live happily ever after. And knowing what her motivation is will only help you. Maybe that's not what happens. Maybe you're not that type of person. Maybe you're the type of person who says, you know, I want to marry somebody who loves me for myself.
Right.
And so you break up with her because you're looking for a wife. So in that latter category, you might make the mistake of thinking you're going to be upset about that. And that's not what would happen. You won't be upset. You'll be relieved. You'll say, thank goodness I figured this out now before I wound up owing her $20,000 a month in alimony.
Okay.
And when you go forward now to look for another person, you are wiser. maybe you don't mention the yacht or the Learjet. You
Right.
see, because you want to see if they like you.
For me.
So
Okay.
this is like a simple example that happens to people all the time, where you could use this in a very beneficial way. This is not hard to do.
Mhm.
And let me explain why it's not hard to do.
Mhm.
This is natural law. It's like when you look at the Pythagorean theorem.
Mhm.
It doesn't take much sense to say, this makes sense to me. I see. And the more you use it, the more sense it makes, and the more dimension it has to you. You know, or the formula for a circle. When you get, this is a number called pi. It's about 3.14. Oh, I see. And it's the same thing here. It's not counterintuitive. That's why people get this. So here's what happens.
Mhm.
Pi opens the book. He looks at a scale. Never saw it before in his life. He looks at the scale and he will say something like, oh, this makes sense. I see. Scale of control. Yeah. And he sees there's 7 levels of control, or
Mhm.
whatever scale it is. See?
Yeah.
People get this. And the reason they get it is it's natural law.
Okay. All right. So when you just had to mention the level of the level of control, because my ex-wife was that, and I wish if I would have known what the 7 levels of control were back then, I probably wouldn't have married her, because her main rule was what's yours is mine and what's mine is mine. That's how the marriage practically went.
Mhm.
So, what else can you explain about in reference to these 35 levels, in reference to how to really take a look at it with today's? Well, you mentioned one of the levels, group levels, is government. How would you place that in reference to what's going on with the government today?
First of all, let me say this. You hear continual discussion of the left and the right,
Mm-hmm.
right? There is no left or right.
Okay.
It's a complete made-up arbitrary.
Okay.
That is why it is a totally confused area. It's
Okay.
not left or right. It's up or down.
Okay.
And I'm giving you the up or the down. I'm
Okay.
giving you the 7 levels of government in the sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is higher than this one, and this one is higher than this one. And again, this is not hard to do. You look, oh, I see, we're at level so-and-so.
Okay.
So this completely demystifies
Mm-hmm.
a train wreck, which is people trying to understand government and getting nowhere with it.
Okay. So where do you see this government that's going on right now, this administration, in reference to those levels? What level do you see it at this time?
When you say this government, are you talking about the United States federal government?
That is correct.
Okay.
Or by misclassifying that level.
Let me say this generally.
Yeah.
All of the main governments on Earth, the CCP, the EU, the Russian Federation, the United States, all of them are at level 5 on the scale.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to look in the book, because I don't want to start throwing words around that you're not going to understand.
Right.
So they're all at the same level. There's actually a paragraph in the book where I go through the entire history of the United States.
Okay.
From the very beginning, and show what level the government was at, all the way from 82, 81, something like that, all the way until 2020, which is when the book was published.
Okay.
And again, this is not hard to get. When you see the logic of it, people, I got to tell you, some version of this book has existed now for 30 years.
Okay.
So thousands of people have been involved in this all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spoken to many of these. Nobody has ever said anything like, I don't get this. This doesn't make any sense, or anything like that. Nobody has ever said that. What they say is, initially they say, oh, this is fascinating. And then when they actually study it, they say something like, wow, this is a life-changing book. If you want to improve your life, you should use this book because it will do that. Okay.
All right. So how can people, I did put up the website, septemics.com. Where else can they get the book besides the website?
Well, the book is available wherever books are sold. Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. If you just type the word Septemics into a search engine, you'll get thousands of responses, including all the people selling the book, like the Acme bookstore in Des Moines, Iowa. So it's very easy to find. Most people just go to Amazon. It's got its little page on Amazon, so you can get it easily.
Okay. And how could, in reference to, if they want to reach out to you personally in reference to, hey, can you explain where I am on these levels and so on?
First of all, there's actually two different questions there.
Okay.
One question is, my email address is on the website.
Okay.
So if you go to septemics.com, you'll find my email address, and you can send me a nasty email if you wish.
Okay.
But also, the other thing you have to realize is, as I say in the book, I insist you should never tell the level of any living person on any scale. To do so is counterproductive and unethical. And I'll tell you why. Number one, as I suggested earlier, every time you correctly find a level, whether it's on yourself or another, you have an insight. Oh, that's why I couldn't get along with Mary, because she's at this level on this scale. See? And that clears it up in your mind. So you continually have insights as a result of using this material. And if you tell the person, you're taking that away from him.
Right.
You want him to look at it and say, oh, now I see what's going on with this, which is a very positive experience. The other thing is this. Most people do not like to be evaluated. You know how sometimes the wife will go to the husband and say, you know what's wrong with you? You need to be more ambitious. You need to get a second job. That's not helping him. That just makes him think about getting a divorce. What she should do is give him the book and say, Fred, look at this book. This would help you. Really? Yeah, read it. Because he'll figure it out himself. Yeah. Oh, now I see why I'm having trouble with work. It's because I'm at this level on this scale. And when that happens, he will have an epiphany and it will resolve the situation to some degree for him. But let me tell you in a general way how this is beneficial to people, because that's what they really want to know. Yeah. First of all, I wrote this book to help people. I've had a lifetime of helping people. The idea here is that I'm giving you a yardstick by which to measure human affairs. In other words, if the person or the individual or the group or whatever moves persons up the scale, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. So I'm giving you a clear way to know, do I want to do this or not? Do I want to be this person or not? Do I want to send my son to the school or not? It really clarifies that. And the second thing is, as I said, just finding your level or another person's level is inherently beneficial. You have a realization. Now I see why my son's having trouble in school. He's at this level. And then once you know it, you can then improve the person by moving them up one level on the scale. You cannot skip a level. It's absolutely impossible. Think about it this way. If you're on the first floor and you want to go to the fifth floor, one way or another, you're going to have to go through the second, the third, and the fourth, whether you take the elevator, the escalator, or the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very user-friendly material. It helps you find out where you are and get you to the next level up, which will be a distinct improvement in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how this works. It's very clear. I spent 25 years working on this book, and I could explain why if you want.
Good.
But as a result of that, I know axiomatically, as a scholar, that these scales are correct, meaning they're accurate, they're precise, and they're specific. In the realm of human affairs, there's very little that's accurate, precise, and specific. Almost nothing. This is like a completely new way of thinking about human affairs. You have to sort of learn a new way of thinking about it, because the subtitle of the book is Analysis, Prediction, and Management of Human Phenomena. So you can take the scale and it will analyze the situation for you. You'll say, I see what's going on. We're at level 5. Then once you have analyzed it, you can then predict what's going to happen. And because you can predict what's going to happen, you can then manage the area. So this is very useful to people. And it doesn't matter what the application could be in your romance, in your social club, in your business, whatever. It applies if people are involved. So I would say if you can read English reasonably well and you have an interest in improving yourself or others, this book is for you.
Okay. All right. So, Jim, I thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're welcome to come back on anytime. If anything new that you want to promote or, explain comes up during your journey. I don't know how to call it, journey expertise. As your expertise expands, we'll say it that way, and you want to share it, just you're welcome to come back on and let me know, and we'll be happy to share it. Hopefully people that do watch this post live stream will go to the website septemics.com. Oops, sorry about that. And look into possibly getting the book and looking into seeing where they stand in their lives as well. So I do thank you for coming on and explaining all this. And I do thank you for letting me bring a little bit of myself into where some of these items as a scenario would fit in the levels, even though it's not, there's more to it than I probably would know, that I probably would need to know. But at least, I have an idea that, okay, a trust level for me on a personal level is a level 1 in reference to relationships in a group. And where, there's other levels where I personally stand in reference to my identity and, the person that I am, in reference to who I am and how I am. And some of those levels could be in any way. And it's a good finalized question for me in reference to this. When I mentioned about, when we did that little scenario with me about the levels in the personal level, is there a way they get tweaked? Like altered just a little in reference to how can I say it? In reference to, you're saying that I'm at this level, but maybe I'm not fully at that level. Like there's a little bit of a difference that could separate me from one level to another.
Well, let me say this.
Yeah.
Some of the scales are what I call general scales, meaning you find your level or you find another person's level and you're done. It has nothing to do with context. But most of the scales I call specific scales, and they require a context, meaning like I gave you the example of motivation before.
Right.
You go from your wife's motivation to your mother's motivation to your son's motivation. Those are different contexts.
Okay. Gotcha.
Also, some of the scales I call quantum scales, meaning there's nothing between the levels. You're either at level 2 or you're at level 3.
Okay.
In between, it's like intergalactic space. There's nothing. Right. But most of them are general scales, meaning you could be at level 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4. Right. So there are transitions that go on. So very often a person is like in between two levels.
Yeah, that's what I mean by the tweaking. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not hard to find. You'll find it. You'll say, yeah, well, I could see that I'm kind of at this one, but I'm kind of moving into this one.
Yeah.
And that's the answer.
Okay. All right. Well, Jim, again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And thank you for the insight and the expertise and the introduction to Septemics to us. Like I said, if anybody comes on after the live stream and asks questions, I will definitely send them to you so that we can answer them, get the answer and bring it back onto the comments for that person that if they ask. And like I said, you're welcome to come back on the podcast anytime. Just reach out to me if another revolution comes out, or like I said, something new on your end comes out and you want to bring out, or like you have a new, or expansion to the 35 scales, the 32 scale, the 32 levels, etc.
Okay.
All right. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. God bless you all.
Okay, Joe, I have to tell you something.
Yeah.
Because you asked about